Good evening, everybody. Hello, my name's Ken. I'm from ADHD Ireland, and I'm joined by Terry, Hannah, and Tricia from the office. As I say, when we are in the office. Thank you very much for making time to come along tonight. We very much appreciate it. Over the years, one of the main initiatives that we've been delivering for parents is our Parenting Plus course. So we're delighted that Una O'Brien, who's been facilitating this course for the last 5 years for us, has come along to give us this webinar on parents' hints, tips, and strategies. And we know that over the years, Una has built up, a reservoir of expertise in this area, and we're delighted to be able to share this with you tonight. Una has a presentation for you, and we'll be including some videos, so we know it's going to be a little bit more interactive than usual. However, as usual, we always like to get your comments and questions. So always, if you have a question, please pop it into the Q&A. While we do get them into the chat on occasion, our difficulties, we can't move them from one to the other. So if you do have a question at any time whatsoever, please pop it into the Q&A and we'll ask Una at the end. Just to let you know, we will be using live transcriptions. So you'll see that at the bottom of the screen. If you like it, use it. If you don't, you have the option to turn it off. We hope to end about 9 o'clock. So again, thank you very much for coming along tonight. And at this stage, we'd love to hand over to Una, and we look forward to your presentation.
Lovely. Thanks a million, Ken. Thanks and welcome all, and thanks for joining and I suppose setting aside the time this evening. And as Ken said, my name is Una O'Brien, and my formal training is as a speech and language therapist with over 20 years, I have to say, experience of working with children and their families, children with a range of developmental difficulties, mental health difficulties. And I'm also a trained facilitator of the Parents Plus children's course, and a lot of this talk tonight is based on that. And I would direct you at any time that suits you to go to that Parents Plus website. It's fantastic, and I think I know they're doing other courses on that as well as on the ADHD Ireland website too. So yeah, as Ken said, I've been presenting parents courses with ADHD Ireland now for about 5 years. So I suppose when we usually do our groups, we spend time at the beginning kind of introducing each other to one another, but I see there's nearly 100 participants, so it's not really practical tonight. So I suppose I just hope that I'm really able to make this course as relevant and as helpful and as personal to each of you in your lives as parents, and in helping you with your children through their lived experiences of ADHD. So I suppose, yeah, the focus of this evening is on sharing ideas that help to build and maintain close relationships with you and your child, and encourage that, and maybe to think also about kind of establishing routines and rules at home, so that home life benefits and your children's development improves as well along with that. If we have any questions, absolutely, we'll definitely schedule some time at the end, and I hope that we can get around to as many of those as possible, and sincere apologies if we don't get around to everybody, but we'll endeavour to do that, absolutely. Okay, so I suppose when we think about building relationships and good, close, connected relationships with our children, there are kind of many layers to it. But what we want, I suppose, when we think about it, is we want a kind of basic parenting tools and styles that are, the emphasis is on positivity, on fun, on encouragement, on being as playful a parent as possible. So this ideally is what we want most of in our interactions and our parenting with our children. This is what we're kind of striving for. So in our children's experiences of being a child in our homes, we would like this to be the most part of their experiences. And then things like, the consequences or sanctions or, directly managing this behavior, we would like that to be less often in frequency. So that's what we're striving for. And these ideas, I suppose, include things like, we want more encouragement in the house, we want more positivity, and we want more play and special time together. And I know we've all heard about the benefits of play and special time. And I would say for children with ADHD, this is even more important. And I think they often experience a lot of criticisms in their life, or more critical feedback perhaps than other children. So our scheduling play and special time with them, or using encouragement and making sure it gets through, aims to rebalance that criticism or that kind of critical feedback that they tend to receive more of. And many children, or when they grow up as parents and they're reflecting back on their lives as children with ADHD, would report that. So I suppose setting aside this special time together, it can be hard, it can be stressful initially, but more often than not, most parents have reported that setting aside this special time together does have a positive effect on their children and on their children's emotional life, their children's well-being, their relationships together, and the general kind of mood and atmosphere at home. Many parents would have said as well over the years that, for some, it doesn't come natural. And I think if you feel it doesn't come naturally to you, especially because it's so hard in terms of this lockdown new world that we live in, or if we're working from home, or just that we're just spending a huge amount of time together. So I would really include the idea of, just time that you're with each other and ease. So, that can be tucking into bed at night, having a little quiet word, grabbing a hot chocolate together, a movie with the duvet and popcorn on the couch. So I'm not very prescriptive about how the place should be and what it should look like, especially in this kind of lockdown world that we live in. It can really take any form, and it's very much dependent on your confidence as a parent. If it's something very new, you might not feel very comfortable launching straight into some play straight off. So it's really about special time together. So I suppose that the benefits of it can be great, and they can really often reduce conflict and negative behaviors that need more direct management. So I often think of play and special time as like a confidence builder, but also as a conflict reducer within the home as well. I suppose, yeah, that idea, and again, we kind of, in the parents groups, we kind of, meet those ideas out more about pressing the pause button, tuning into what's happening, and then making a plan to kind of react differently. So again, I suppose it's something, we're just all these ideas, we can't get into them much in depth because it's just a 1.5 hour slot, but I would encourage you to kind of give it a go and try those concepts at home yourselves. The other idea, I suppose, that I think in terms of kind of tips and strategies that's really important for children with ADHD is routines. And I suppose we need to ask, why are they so important, especially for children with ADHD? And again, often, adults with ADHD report that it's something that is very useful for them in their lives, and they kind of, wish that they had had more support around this in this area as children. So children with ADHD have difficulties with working memory. So that's kind of holding something in their heads long enough to do something with the information. We know they have difficulty often with executive functioning and with attention. So children often, with ADHD, it's hard for them to get started, can be a difficulty. Maybe starting off might be fine, but then maintaining focus or motivation for a task can be a struggle. Planning, prioritizing can be a struggle. Transitioning from one activity to the next. So, example, a morning routine can be hard. So they might start off fine, but might not be able to keep it enough up consistently to, start their homeschooling or get out to the car or whatever it is. And also they're kind of some like the predictability and to know what's coming next. And that can have a good role in reducing kind of their anxiety and their worry, and their ability to kind of, it helps to make sense of what is happening and to plan for that. So I suppose in terms of kind of routines, if we take it again that we, it is an important factor. Next, I suppose we want to think about what ways we can help children to follow a routine that we might have at home. Okay, So there's a couple of ideas. And again, many of them are things you're probably doing yourselves at home. But some of the ideas would be around, including them in the planning, which is actually a really, really useful tool and sometimes overlooked as well. So you can explain to them what's happening, or you can invite them to be part of the planning with you. So like, listen, screen time, guys, it's turning into a bit of a stressy part of the day. We're going to make a little routine around that, or whatever it is, and invite their own suggestions. And sometimes it's incredible what they will bring to it. So you might say, right, well, we're going to have our meal beforehand, or we'll have to time it in this way, or if you come off when your turn is up, you're rewarded, or whatever it might be. Breaking a routine then into small steps. And again, this is very dependent on a child's age and their overall ability. So it might be something very small, like it might be breaking up, getting dressed, pants, trousers, socks, shoes, or it could be, something bigger like breakfast, clothes, out the door. Having a natural kind of inbuilt reward in it as well. So, we get into the car, you can pick, you're the DJ from the, on the way to school, or you get your homeschooling done by a certain time, you get an extra bit of screen time later. Put it up on a chart as well is really good, especially for children with ADHD. They love the visual. So put it up there, involve them in it, get creative. And I suppose starting small as well. So starting with, it doesn't have to be a whole week's routine to begin with, especially if it's a bit of a struggle. So it could be just a section of the day, or even a section of an activity, and be really encouraging. So even if it's kind of one step forward, two steps back, maintaining that encouraging response can be really, really beneficial. So the visual, explaining it to them, involving them in the planning, having a natural reward, starting small and being patient. And I know these are all extra demands on us as parents during this time. So yeah, they're kind of the main sort of points, I suppose, about how to make sure a routine is the children stick to it. And again, it's something that, obviously the ultimate ideal is that you have a routine so set up that the children are able to eventually just have to, they're able to do it themselves. But obviously that's not ideal, and that's not always what happens. So you might have to alter the routine, change it around, say, actually, I've noticed, you're better doing your homework after you've had a bit of chill out time first, or telly first, or whatever. So it's about rejigging it as needs be as well. And so to be kind of flexibly rigid is I suppose what we're after. Okay, guys, last quick point, and again, these points are all big, and they all almost can take like half a session of a 1.5 hour session, or even one whole one usually. But because of this, we're just kind of literally dipping it in, presenting the ideas. The next thing, and the last one, and then we'll stop for questions, is the idea of rules. I suppose the idea around rules is that, you're thinking about what are the really, really important rules in our house. So what are the core rules in our house? And that's those rules are the kind of the important ones, but also the fewest. So it's almost like, a food pyramid. And, at the very top are those core rules that you will insist on. So whether they be things about like safety, having to wear your seatbelt, or take your medication, or whatever things are really important. The next one then, I suppose, down in the pyramid, there's a bit more of them, are the negotiable rules. So things like, children, they have to be done, but children can make certain choices around them. So the chores have to be done, but the children can decide when to do it, or whatever, this idea, or you have to wear a coat, but you can either wear that coat or that coat. So there's some choice and some negotiation within it. And then at the bottom of the pyramid, which we want kind of most of ideally, is the decisions that children can kind of make themselves. What games to play, what books to read at night, what clothes to wear. And the bigger they are, the more kind of control, I suppose, they have over those things often. The more likely they are to stick with those few core rules and to be able to maintain the discipline and the attention to adhere to those core rules. So that's kind of, I suppose, food for thought. And again, like everything, I suppose as a parent, you can have a time to think yourself, well, what are the core rules in my house? Or what are the negotiable rules? Or what are the decisions that the children can make themselves, which I want to try and make as much of as possible? And once you've figured it out yourself, it can be, again, a great idea to invite the children in, right, guys, what do you think yourselves in our house? What are the things that you can, what are the decisions you can make yourselves? Or what are the really important ones that we're all going to sign up to together as a family? And we're going to stick with this. And if these are broken, then what might happen? Will there be a sanction? Will there be a consequence? Or how will we work all that? And again, really including children into that planning can make them follow those more. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to open it up to any questions that you guys have. And apologies again for all the technical difficulties. Is that okay?
That's great. Thanks very much. And I have to say, I know there's been technical difficulties tonight, but genuinely, I'd like to say thank you to everybody, you know, for sticking with us for the first thing. But you know, I've been going through the chat and the Q&A when, you know, you were talking there, and there's loads of new suggestions there that I hadn't seen before. You know, there was a couple in there for something called Happyocity, which are little positive affirmation cards that you can stick in lunch boxes. And there's the Happy Self Journal. And we're a little bit split on playing Monopoly or not. Trampolines, indoor camping. Nice. Lots of great stuff coming through from the parents themselves, and that's really, really positive. But obviously, just probably there is a huge amount of questions in the things or in the Q&A already, so we'd like to get through them, or try to do them as many as we can. So just I'll start off with the very first one, then we can just go to maybe Hannah, Tricia, and sorry, questions gone funny there. Sorry, just a very quick one, just from Pelin. My daughter is 12, and I wonder which parent's course is suitable for her age.
Okay, great question. So the children's program is typically 6 to about 11, 12, and then the adolescent one would start. So again, at that age, because it's so close, you could either go to the children's one or the adolescent one. So it really does depend on kind of what stage you feel your children are at. Some at that stage are really in the kind of pre-teen, teeny stage and phase. And then I would go to the adolescent group. If she's a little younger for her age, I would recommend the children's parenting, the children's program. That's the 6 to kind of 11, 12. Yeah, so it's very much dependent on your child's kind of maturity levels, I suppose. The adolescent one is getting more into the kind of nitty gritty of what will arise in their adolescence and the teenage years.
And could you just to clarify then, just a little bit more depth for me more than anything else. One thing you find is, you know, and the one thing we always say about ADHD, there is an emotional maturity delay with ADHD. So if you have a 12-year-old, they may have the emotional maturity of a 9 or 10-year-old. And so when you're saying you're looking at the individual, like, you need to take into account the emotional maturity as well as the intellectual or the physical development of the child as well. So.
Absolutely, great point, Ken. Absolutely, and that, yeah, definitely their overall development, including you know, very much so their emotional development. Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you very much for that. So just maybe just we go to the first question to Hannah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Una. There were lots of tips and strategies there. Now, despite the technical difficulties, it's still great. And you know what, even when the video was playing, you could hear it, and I think that was the most important part. So I think we still got a good bit out of it. And also when you dropped off, we had a big old brainstorm over games and things, which is kind of fun, because I know we're saying at the start, you know, we can't all introduce ourselves because it's kind of webinar format and there's so many people, but everyone is kind of getting involved, which is kind of nice.
Good to hear.
In the Q&A, I'm seeing quite a few questions about teenagers. I think I'll wrap 3 into one. Sylvia's asking, how about teenagers? How would you engage an older child who doesn't particularly want to spend time with you? And Francesca also asked, Francesca, said, or was it, sorry, I lost the question now. I thought it was someone asked about a 17-year-old. Oh, have I said the wrong person there? But someone said, I remember there was a question, sorry if it's the wrong person I mentioned, but they asked about a 17-year-old boy again. And Michelle is also saying anything for teenagers.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, isn't it? Because you're right. And I mean, it's a positive thing in one way that they don't really want to be spending time with you. Do you know what I mean? It's a really appropriate part of their development. It's really all about the friends now, or very much about, you know, things that they're in their world, especially probably their online world, especially during lockdown and all that. And, you know, it's a hard one because sometimes I think, you know, the grapple as parents to kind of just get some sense of what's going on in there, in that world, in their heads, in their hearts. And sometimes it just takes a huge amount of patience. It's not when we want it, but they will bring it to us, or we'll get an indication of their mood and their vibe. And we just have to observe and kind of watch and wait it out and be that patient person that's full of empathy there, but not forcing them to kind of be with us in the way that we would like them to be with us. Because it really changes, and it can change quite quickly for some parents, you know. They can be walking to school nearly holding the child's hand one day, and then suddenly they're like, no, you know, you're so last year, basically. I'm a great believer in, you know, if your child, for example, is into gaming online and all of that, I would really encourage getting involved in their online world with them. You know, I'm not in any way prescriptive about what that play should look like. So if they will share that world with you, for example, brilliant. Isn't that time together? So if you, you know, even jokingly can help them to, you know, how do I get a kill on Fortnite? And you're just jokingly playing it with them and they're trying to teach you, and there's loads of guffawing, but it's some little entry into their world. And again, I think sometimes it's a little bit like less is more. The less you kind of go towards it, maybe the more it will come to you. And it's more that you can comment and say things and show by your body that you see them, you're there for them, and that you hear them. So even comments like, you know, really encouraging comments can be that special time for a teenager that doesn't want to hang out with you. But when they pass you, or they come into your sphere, they're seeing a warm face and they're like, good man, I saw what you did there yesterday. You know, you're deadly at that, actually. I've really noticed you have a skill on that. That can be catching, it's more about catching seconds and moments, I think, really, with teenagers. But movies together, online gaming together, getting them to show you technology is a fantastic thing. And then for some, kicking a ball around, going for a walk, grabbing a coffee and insomnia, you know. Yeah.
Oh, thanks for that. Just the next question I think Terry has.
Yep. Hi, Una. So a question from Tara. She says, should special time be on a one-to-one basis? We have 4 kids, 15, 13, 7 and 9 months. Our baby is severe, profoundly deaf, so takes up a lot of our time. Our 13-year-old daughter has ADHD and dyslexia. She is having a very difficult time with lockdown, and the question's disappeared, but yeah, that's the gist of it, basically.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a huge amount going on there for that parent. And I, you know, fair play to you, and fair play to you for setting aside the time to come on tonight. You know, again, guys, I mean, look at, you know, ideally one-on-one time, yes, children benefit from it, but you know, there are so many ways that we can be with them, and so many ways that we can have special time with them. So while one-on-one is lovely, it doesn't always realistically and practically work, and especially because we're all now locked into our houses. So it's not like one is going out and home later from school and one is at a minder, or so we have to be practical with kind of what we're dealt with at the moment. So if possible, catch the times, You know, again, like the video showed, the little girl up on the counter while the mum was cooking the dinner, or, you know, just a little hug at bedtime, or, you know, in the bath, having a little splash about, throwing the little ducks in. And so that kind of thing. But again, I wouldn't, I would try and incorporate it into just daily activities that you have to do to get by with all that huge workload that you have there already.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. I think Trisha has the next question.
Hi, yeah, Kate wants to say, she says, I'm a parent of 2 children. My son is ADHD. We have many episodes of sibling rivalry. Of late, my daughter has become extremely difficult to manage and many tantrums, etc. I'm finding it difficult to manage her at times. Is this normal behavior? Any advice on how I should deal with this problem?
Yeah, I think it's very normal, very normal. Especially in abnormal times, you know, because like that, there's very little time when we can be apart now. So everything is going to be escalated and kind of exaggerated. It's a tricky one with sibling rivalry, because I suppose you have to try and maybe figure out like what might be going on for them. So let's say if one is getting more attention, or if one is getting the other one into trouble more, or, you know, so it could be worth your while, maybe if they're able, is to have a little quiet time or a chat with them separately. So kind of like, listen, I've noticed over the last few weeks, the two of you are really, you know, you're really annoying each other, and you seem to be kind of wrecking each other's heads. What is that about for you? How, you know, what's going on for you? Is it hard for you? And try and get her picture and then your boy's picture of what might be going on. And you can even make a plan separately. Listen, it could be, let's say it could be jealousy or frustration or hurt or just boredom or annoyance, whatever they bring to you. You could even present, listen, I think sometimes you might feel so bored that you annoy your brother, or you feel that he's getting more of this or that or the other. And I think you could see if you can come up with ideas together. So, you know, if they're able to make a plan together, or like a kind of a system of consequences where you say to them, I will, you know, if there's fighting between you, I will have to give a consequence for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count you down from 5 and give you the warning, but then if it continues, I'm going to have to give you the consequence. And this is all written up on your chart and previously agreed. Or you might experiment with kind of them doing something separate. So you have a quiet word, let's say with the daughter, or whoever you suspect might be causing it a little bit more. And you say, I'm going to notice anytime you pull out of a fight, and I'm going to note that on the calendar or on the star chart, and I'm going to really reward you for that. And you're drawn her attention to you noticing it when she pulls out. Or again, catch them at any time when they're not in moments of rivalry and they're getting on well. Even if they're just sitting, chilling, watching telly together, you can pause the telly, and you can say, guys, I just want to say, I see you both there, sitting calmly together, and I'm so proud of you. You're such good brother and sister. And you're kind of speaking hope into it. And I know I'm going to see more of this. It's making my heart swell with joy. Fair play to you. So you're catching them when they're good as well. But a great one is chatting and problem solving separately with your children as well.
Great, thanks for that. We should go maybe back to Hannah for our next question, please.
Yep. This question comes from Kira. She says, I feel like my 7-year-old boy takes up so much of my time. Besides his problems and extra work, etc., I'm also fighting hard for services. Meanwhile, I have a 2-year-old boy also, and I get big mum guilt as I feel he is left out a lot. Any suggestions on spending some quality time with him?
A brilliant question. And I think, is that with your 2-year-old?
I imagine it would be, because she was saying that the 7-year-old boy seems to be taking up a lot of her time, and she's saying that she has a 2-year-old boy as well.
It's very tricky, isn't it? Because even at that age, like I know we mentioned about 12-year-olds and 17-year-olds earlier, but even at that age, 7 and 2, they have different needs, and they want you in probably very different ways as well. I think, first of all, if I could just lift the guilt off your shoulder and put it over there, which, you know, if you can at any time, try and just help yourself or encourage yourself with kind of, you know, compassion statements and just forgiving statements to yourself, like I'm doing all right here, I'm doing okay, because that guilt in the mix will actually not help. And, you know, coming from a place of guilt, it often doesn't help you stay calm, and it doesn't help you maybe see things clearly, which you probably, I reckon that you probably have the answers to this question nearly inside yourself, but you just, you know, you're consumed by busyness, stress and guilt, and that's a really hard place to be as a parent. I suppose, and then maybe to directly answer, at two, they can often, they're in a nice age in that it's almost like whatever you do with them, they can be happy. So it can be bath time, it can be, you know, that can be your special time once a week. Start off with that. Start slow, start small steps. If you can schedule separate little time to tuck them into bed and have a little bit of story time there, again, you're ending each day with a little pocket of kind of intimate one-to-one time. And that might help alleviate your guilt as well, you know. Any little building, sand play, you know, dried lentils in a little basin and he filling it up with little cups and jugs, and you know, painting, real messy paint that you can bring outside. They love that at that age. Big pick chalks, you know, that they can draw out on the footpath. All of those kind of, another great idea, guys, is actually to Google, you know, how to play with a 2-year-old or how to play with the 4-year-old, and you can get really nice ideas online about just games at their developmental level.
Thanks for that. Maybe just take a question or a couple of questions myself. There's two sort of related ones.
Yeah.
And the first one's from Lisa, and she was saying, how do you tell your child they have ADHD? Does it help if they know? Should I tell my child he's 6? And then Roisin was also asking quite a similar question. What's the best age to sit down with your child to explain ADHD to them? Her son is 9.
They're really good questions, and it's great. We cover a lot of that in the kind of 5 weekly groups. So I suppose to answer your question, is there an age that's right or not? Not really. This is one thing that is very, very specific to the child's kind of, I suppose, cognitive, so their intellectual ability level, their emotional level, their interest. Some kids just aren't even, they're not a bit bothered about why they're going to see all these people, or some children want to know it and they're asking questions and they're bringing it to you, and they might love even the kind of scientific or sort of neurology of it all. So it's very, very dependent on each child. It's also dependent on how you feel and have you had time to kind of process it and work it out as well. So a great indicator that a child is ready is that they may come to you with some kind of question or thought or a little upsetness, like, why can't I just sit like the other kids, or why am I the one that the teacher, you know, gives out to, or whatever. And that might be little openers. So they're, I suppose, waiting for that little opener, waiting for the question, the hook. And then I would say start with small, always ask them first why they're asking you or what happened. So you get a sense of what they are understanding from it. So they might divulge a whole lot of information or thoughts. Well, I think I have something wrong with me because of this and that happens and that, and they might have loads of information that they've kind of formulated. Or they might just have one word like, I don't know, I'm just always jittery. So whatever they give you in terms of the amount of information and the vocabulary that they give you, you can then use that back in the conversation with them. So if they've said, I'm always jittery, then that's the words you can use. Okay, you're right. And I've noticed that too. And, you know, that's why sometimes we want to get a little bit of extra help for your jitteriness. And that's why we have the routine. And is there anything we do that can help then with the jitteriness? Because I'd love for you that it wouldn't be that much of a challenge for you and that kind of thing. And then they might, the conversation, you'll have to follow their lead on that conversation and where it brings, but definitely start off small, don't give too much information to begin with, and move with them and their inquiries and their queries. There's some great books out there about it. For younger children, do I have them here with me? All Dogs Have ADHD is a great one. There's one about dragons as well. There's a fantastic, that Adhd.com is a super website with loads of stuff for teenagers as well and for older kids. So there's some great stuff online, but there's no age at which you need to tell, or no, no specific formula around that. You really need to, some kids are just fine with a couple of the symptom names, as it were, the movement, you move a lot, and some kids want the whole acronym, the ADHD, and what that stands for and why. So you really have to follow their lead. But I would say always leave that conversation that you have with them with a lot of hope. A great one is referencing the celebrities that have it, that they're left with, they can always come back and discuss it with you at any time if they have further questions. Yeah.
Okay, that's very sensible advice. I know we ran a little bit late there with the videos, but we're just a few minutes behind schedule, but we're coming up to 9 o'clock. But maybe we just take a couple more questions, maybe one from Terry and Tricia. So just Terry, do you have the next question?
Yep. Okay. So El Marie says, do you have any tips on calming a very hyperactive child?
It's a hard one. I mean, it's a very hard one. And I suppose more parents than not have said that, medication can really, really help on that front. That's, I suppose, the reality of a lot of ADHD intervention. And many parents have said, yeah, that medication really does help. I suppose some of the things you can do is probably managing your own levels of calm. And that's a very proactive thing that you can do to model that behavior. But at the end of the day, this is often something very kind of neurological based that's happening in their inside in them. And if they, even as much and all as they would like to be able to manage it, they often can't. So you can just manage your own reactions around it. You might be able to have some chat outside of a hyper kind of time where you can say, look, when you're this way, when your body's really, really, energized and you're very, very busy, or you get really upset or whatever, I need you maybe to either, where can you go to use up your energy? Could we call it your trampoline time, or could you, what helps you calm down, and explore that a little bit with them. There's a great one that actually just on the last group that I was running, a parent had one of these glitter bottles, and it was basically just a bottle, like an empty kind of, let's say, see-through water bottle or whatever, filled with, I think, water, glue and glitter maybe. And that when it was shook, it all, was dispersed and was all going up and down the bottle. And then they would place the bottle on the table and the child would have to watch it. And almost the concentration of watching the glitter settle at the bottom of the bottle helped them just to kind of, regulate and calm themselves down. So there are some good tips like that online. But again, medication really helps. Many parents have said that. Your own management of your own level of calm. If it turns into a conflictual situation, like for example, if they hit you or hitting others, the most important thing in those times is to try and calm them and just reconnect before you do any teaching or learning or consequences or anything like that. So you're saying things like, I see you're really angry, but you have to stop hitting. Or, you're keeping your sentences very short, less talking when they're in a state of really a big upset or conflict. And then if they're stomping and banging, you can say, okay, that's good. I can see you calming down now, because now they're not hitting. And then they might go from the stomping or the banging of the door down to the next level where they're like shouting, I just hate when this happened. And inside you're thinking, good, we're actually coming down, we're actually de-escalating, we're moving in the right direction. And you're just using very little language. And you're saying, okay, I know, I can see it, I can see your anger. That's tough, and don't worry, this will pass. You won't feel like this soon. So you're just bringing it down. And then once you can reconnect, that's a time to really, I suppose, give empathy, give connection back. And often the learning then kind of comes after that.
Thank you very much. I think we have to go and buy a glitter bottle, actually. I like that suggestion.
It just came to my mind there because literally a parent brought it up the last week, and a couple of them said, "Oh yeah, God, that's So yeah.
Oh, that's nice and lovely. Just to say, maybe we'll just go to Tricia for maybe one last question.
Yeah, and this one now, this is for a slightly older boy, Una, but this parent she said that her recently diagnosed 15-year-old has been allocated an SNA in school because he needs it to keep focused and to take homework down to help him. He hates the attention as the other kids are calling him autistic. It breaks my heart.
Oh, that's a really tricky one, isn't it? That's so tricky. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, I suppose that's really, if the parent feels that they're in a good place or have a good relationship with the school or the SNA, that's definitely something I would recommend that the SNA come in on the chat about. And if there's a way that she can just make herself really as subtle as possible, or even spread her presence out with other people in the class so that she's starting to be seen as a class helper or general support person, I suppose together she could really look with you at creative ways that she would not make your son feel that way. And again, if there's, if I forget the beginning of it, was it to help him write things down, or to do some of that, again, access to a laptop, and maybe that might really help him manage some more of that himself, and that he would need her less and less, or that maybe there's a little bit of time after each class where she checks he has his work. I think it's probably, together inviting the SNA, can you come up with creative ways together where she is kind of really making her presence subtle and trying to be creative around not drawing attention to him. It's a really hard one, and at that age it's all about saving face, so it could be counterproductive if he's so focused on her being there and the mortification of it, he might not be benefiting from her hugely. So I'd really, really encourage her to involve the SNA and think together how you can make that work for that teenage boy. Yeah, a hard one.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Thanks so much everybody for sticking with us. I know we did a bit of technical difficulties in the middle, but again, I know, not trying to make a benefit out of something that went wrong, but the amount of suggestions that came back from everybody has been unbelievable. And you have big thanks to Declan Doherty, just the very last one. While we were talking there, he's put in Google how to make a century bottle, and you get lots more ideas done. So there's information out there already. I found out new things we didn't know. So there is lots of help out there, and there's lots of information. So thank you very much for that, Una. We appreciate you taking your time. And thank you very much for doing the courses over the last number of years, and thanks very much for everybody attending tonight, and hopefully we'll see you all again very shortly.
Thanks, guys. Good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.